old saying, that money is the mother's milk of politics. And there is some truth to that. So I would first like to just lament a little bit that as I was driving here, I went by quite a number of combines out in the field. And a lot of you know that my son run about 800 acres. And for me to not be in a combine is pretty tough. Not that I don't enjoy what I'm doing, but harvest is really the highlight of a farmer's life. And so I just want you to know that I'm willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice, which is not being in my combine. So really all I want to do in a very few minutes is explain why I'm here instead of in my combine. And to start that, I'd like to go back to one of Aesop's fables, one of my favorite fables. And Aesop was a collector of parables, really. And one of his stories is about an ant and a grasshopper. And it takes place this time of year because the ant has an ear of corn that he's found, and he's lugging this ear of corn back to the ant colony. And he is met by this grasshopper. And the grasshopper is a live-for-the-moment creature. And the grasshopper says to the ant, "What are you doing then? Hey, you are just, working so hard on that ear of corn. Join me. Eat, drink, and be merry. Live for the moment." And the ant said, "I don't think so, because there's winter coming. Minnesota, like I do, Minnesota. Winter's coming, and if you aren't prepared, you're not going to survive the winter." And the grasshopper continued to make fun of the ant, and the ant took the ear of corn off to the ant colony, and you know the rest of the story. Winter did come, and the ants were fine, and the grasshopper was not. That wisdom of the ages really describes what's going on in Washington, D.C., because you have a bunch of Washington politicians that are living for the moment. Okay? You just don't worry, be happy. And there's some folks like me, I'm an ant, who are willing to say there's an economic winter coming, and you need to plan for the future. By the way, I've made my living in the private sector. I don't know if Walt has ever held a job in the private sector. He's worked for the public sector. And when he thinks employment, he thinks government spending. And when I think employment, I think productivity. I think free enterprise. I think opportunities for people. So the long and short of it is that I'm not in my combine because I have a nasty habit of wanting to know what's happening. And I am a researcher, and I know what's happening, as do you. And the thing that does concern me the most is the extraordinary national debt. Now we're $16 trillion. And I see that, and I see my grandkids, 38, and 3 more on the way that I know of. And frankly, I'd like them to have an opportunity at the American dream, too. And that's why I'm not in my combine. Because I want them to have the opportunity I have had. And I have a hunch that everyone here is for the same reason. Right? Everyone here. By the way, I've got, we've got a debate coming up with Mr. Walls in a week. And he came out with a real bravado challenge. Quist, I challenge you to 3 90-minute debates. And my answer was, sign on the dotted line. Let's get these scheduled as quickly as we can. And we'll see if those 3 90-minute debates come off. Okay? And I would say, don't hold your breath. But we do have one scheduled a week from today. So national debt, $16 trillion and growing. That has doubled in the last 7 years. And I want you to know, I never say to Mr. Walls that it has doubled under his watch, because it has only almost doubled under his watch. Took 7 years, not 6. But the direction is pretty obvious. Now, there are a lot of things to be concerned about regarding that debt. One is that for 2011, 20 cents out of every dollar the federal government collected went for interest on the national debt. And keep in mind, this is not capital expenditure interest, this is operating interest. In 2 years, 2014, 25 cents out of every dollar collected is going to go for interest. Now, down on the farm, we call this money down a rat hole because we get no return on this. So we're not only spending our children's money, we are passing on to them untold amounts of interest. So when people ask me, well, how are we going to fund this, how are we going to fund that, and will you get money for this, and will you get money for that, part of my answer is keep in mind, in 2 years, 25 cents out of every dollar we bring in is going down a rat hole for interest. That, by the way, represents extraordinary financial mismanagement on the part of this Congress, and I think you know that Mr. Walz is right in with the pack. So it really limits what we can do. So I'm committed to balancing the budget, doing so in 5 years. We have to unleash the engines of free enterprise so we can get economic growth. That does mean more tax money too. But we have to start downsizing the government. Historically, the federal government has been about 20% of our GDP. Right now, it's 24%. We have to get back down to that 20% level. The problem is not too few taxes. The problem is obviously too much spending. Now, I want to give one example of that really typifies, it's a microcosm of why Washington is the way it is. And I think you know the example I'm going to give. The example is the so-called Farm Bill. And if you followed my comments in the paper, I have said, among other things, it probably can't pass the way it is. It's such an awful bill. And if you really want to pass something, you should send it back to committee and come out with a bill that somebody can support. Oh, no, we can't do that. We have to pass it now. Well, I think you know what's happened. The bill is not going to pass. And the reason it's not is because there are about 80 members of the House that said, no way, Jose, okay? We can't go there. So, Mr. Walz never imagined that somebody like me in a farm district would come out and oppose the Farm Bill. Never crossed his mind. And when I pointed out why I couldn't support it, he responded by calling me names. That tells you everything. He doesn't have a leg to stand on. No, I'm a numbers guy, and if you don't like numbers, we are in trouble, all right? And I want you to know that seed corn companies used to give us jackets a generation ago. Now they give us calculators. Why? Because you farm with numbers. You invest with numbers. So let me give you some of the numbers. 2007, this bill had a price tag of $286 billion over 5 years. A lot of money. $286 billion. Remember that number. This new bill, by the way, George W. Bush vetoed the bill because it was spending money we didn't have. It was irresponsible. Congress passed the thing over George W. Bush's veto. So don't blame George Bush, okay? Congress has its footprints, fingerprints, everything on this. $286 billion last bill 4 years ago. This one is $500 billion. Okay? Price tag almost doubled. So at a time when we need to cut spending, we've got Mr. Walz and Congress trying to pass a bill that almost doubles it. Okay? Grasshopper, here you are. The grasshoppers of the world say live for the moment. We don't care that the economic winter is coming. Now, how do you account for this extraordinary expansion of the price tag? Well, the Farm Bill, quote-unquote Farm Bill, in its spending is 80% food stamps. All right? So this is par for Washington. Disguise what it's doing. Don't let the public know what's really happening. So the spending in the Farm Bill is 80% for food stamps, 9% for conservation, 11% for subsidies for farmers. That's the breakdown. So where's all the increase? The food stamp portion. Now, why is the food stamp portion ballooning way out of control? I probably shouldn't go any farther because I might spoil your night if I give any more hard copies. But you can handle it, okay? Here's why. But let me back off just for a second and comment that when I was in the legislature, mid-'80s, I was author of the bill that discontinued a welfare department called Economic Security, created the Department of Jobs and Training. The idea was, let's get people off welfare, let's help them find job skills so they can be self-sufficient. Government policy should be aimed at getting people off welfare, not on. Right? Are we on the same page? This Farm Bill, okay, here's how the food stamp system works. Number one, USDA, Department of Agriculture, runs around the country spending millions of our tax dollars advertising, trying to get more people on food stamps. What? You're not taking food stamps? What's wrong with you? Don't you have a brain? Then USDA gives states bonuses for getting more people on food stamps. All right? By the way, I said this to a reporter in another location in the press, and he was floored. He said, "Can you document that, Quist?" I said, "Hey, this is common knowledge." Right? I mean, I'll just read a little bit on the net. There's no doubt about this. Then on top of that, every state figures, well, I can bring it. The federal government pays 100% of the food stamps, right? States don't pay a penny for the stamp, a little bit for administration. So what do states do? They want to get as many people on as they can because it brings federal dollars into the state. All right? So there are three major incentives to get people off of food stamps. No, to get them on. So you've got government policy turned on its head in terms of what should be taking place. So what's going on? The plan is to get more and more people dependent on government so that you get more and more people to vote for government programs and to vote Democratic. Is it that insidious? Is it that obvious? Right? Is it that obvious? Of course, it's that obvious. So this is a microcosm of everything that's wrong with Washington. And so I see this bill, I go to Farm Fest with all the farmers, and I'm asked the question, are you going to support the quote-unquote Farm Bill? Bing, 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 bing. I'm the sixth one down the line. Other people say yes, 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 yes. I say this would be extraordinarily irresponsible. Okay? Horrible government policy. And I again then come back to the point, when the voters elect somebody to represent them in Congress, they're really hiring them to be a good manager of the nation's resources, especially financial. And that is why I am here. And I want you to know, I'm one of the ants of the world that wants to prepare for the future and wants to avoid the economic winter that is on the horizon. Okay? I want to make the announcement, folks. The days of pork barrel politics is over. We are broke. We are not only broke, our line of credit is just about coming to an end. You know our credit rating was downgraded again. You see the cycle where this is heading. As our credit rating goes down, our interest costs go up. As our interest costs go up, our credit rating goes down. All right? You see where we're headed. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our time. This is when we have to take our country back, because we have been brought to the brink, okay, of economic collapse. And I'm not in my combine because I am totally committed to do anything and everything I can to turn this